The Führerbunker, Berlin, April 1945. Hitler's shivering hand clutched the outdated military maps. He demanded the latest situation, and SS Brigade Führer Wilhelm Mohnke reported that the Russians had taken Potsdam and that Berlin was surrounded. Hitler's hollow eyes darted at Goebbels, and he asked whether the advance could be halted in any way. Goebbels, usually impassive, offered no reassurance. Machine gun fire rattled in the distance, and artillery thundered through the walls. The Reich above was collapsing. Ironically, everyone but Hitler could see that his last days would be filled with delusion, decay, and the necessity of doom. April 16, 1945. The roar of distant artillery pulsed like a heartbeat beneath Berlin. At Seelow Heights, over 3,200 Soviet Katyusha rocket launchers unleashed deafening fury. 2.5 million Red Army soldiers surged westward. Operation Berlin had started. At 3 a.m., the eastern horizon erupted in flames as 9,000 Soviet artillery pieces hammered the Oder-Neisse front. Within 30 minutes, more shells fell than during Germany's 1940 French campaign. Waves of tanks rolled through enveloping smoke, while loudspeakers blared psychological warfare, promising surrender or death. German defenders, old men, underage Volkssturm, depleted Wehrmacht, faced hell itself. The ground shook with such aggression that seasoned veterans retched. It was a rolling apocalypse. In the Führerbunker, dust sifted from ceiling cracks. The air, heavy with cigarette smoke, became heavier. Unlike the opulence of the Eagle's Nest or East Prussia, this Spartan compound would be Hitler's last home. Buried beneath the Chancellery gardens, it comprised 30 small rooms across 2 levels. The lower Führerbunker, 28 feet underground, with walls up to 13 feet thick. Constricted halls linked sparse rooms outfitted with reclaimed items, including Hitler's modest study with a portrait of Frederick the Great. Despite electricity, ventilation, and pumps removing groundwater, the bunker was damp, oppressive, and claustrophobic. Adolf Hitler, frail and hunched, shuffled into the map room, seizing a trembling pointer. He insisted that the Soviets must not be allowed to swamp Europe, and claimed Germany would prevail. Around him, Krebs, Bergdorf, and Goebbels exchanged glances. Mohnke knew the Führer was living in a fantasy, yet said nothing. Above, Berlin dissolved into ruin. Civilians crowded subway passageways as apartment blocks collapsed under Soviet fire. Inside, Hitler's warped sense of control held sway. Eva Braun poured champagne, masking dread with conversation. Stalin's armies were less than 50 miles away. The trap had been sprung. Berlin awaited its fate. April 20th, 1945. Midday on April 20th, beneath a smoke-filled Berlin sky, Adolf Hitler marked his 56th birthday. Above ground, the Reich Chancellery garden was scarred by bombing, littered with shrapnel, and veiled in smoke. Yet an official ceremony unfolded. Hitler emerged from his bunker to decorate a handful of trembling Hitler youth boys with the Iron Cross for courage. Alfred Zeck, just 12, had rescued wounded soldiers under fire. As Hitler pinned the medal, his right hand trembled, his shoulders stooped, dragging his left foot, a ghost of the man who once commanded Europe. The visit lasted minutes, then he returned underground, never to re-emerge. In the bunker's staircase room, a grim birthday observance awaited, coffee, cake, and champagne laid out by stenographers and secretaries. Hitler sat stiffly, barely touching his cake, murmuring about Wenck's army or Steiner's counterattack. It was his last official ceremony. Top-ranking Nazis arrived: Joseph and Magda Goebbels, loyal to the end; Hermann Göring, calculating; Heinrich Himmler, already wavering; Admiral Karl Dönitz, sensing change; and Martin Bormann, silently shaping his own escape. Outside, Soviet tanks breached Berlin's outer defenses. General Gotthard Heinrici had warned that the capital could not be held. Albert Bormann tried to persuade Hitler to leave, offering a route south to take command of the remaining armies. Hitler denied the request, insisting he would bring things to a head in Berlin or go under. Whether from fatalism, delusion, or theatrics, his decision doomed not only himself, but those still faithful. That night, under Operation Seraglio, 10 aircraft departed Gatow airfield, carrying selected entourage members to Berchtesgaden. Bormann orchestrated the quiet exodus of principal figures, but not Hitler. As night fell and the bunker walls groaned from bombardment, officers began murmuring the unthinkable: escape. The facade of discipline cracked. Everyone knew the end was near. April 22nd to 23rd, 1945. That morning, April 22nd, Hitler's last illusions were shattered. For days, he had clung to the fantasy of General Steiner's counterattack, believing it could repel the Soviet tide. When Chief of Staff Hans Krebs reported that Steiner's forces could not be assembled, Hitler erupted. In the cramped meeting room, beneath flickering lamps and a haze of cigarette smoke, he flew into a rage. Maps were swept from tables. His voice cracked with anger and despair. He declared that the war was lost and accused his generals of cowardice, betrayal, and failure. Outside, Traudl Junge, Gerda Christian, and Fräulein Kruger froze, overhearing the outburst. When Hitler emerged, hollow-eyed and gray, shaking limbs and waxen features revealed the man beneath the myth. He ordered his secretaries to prepare for a flight south. Eva Braun refused to leave and remained beside him, a rare display of closeness that startled the staff. One by one, staff stayed not out of loyalty, but pity, guilt, or inertia. Meanwhile, Martin Bormann activated the exit strategy for essential personnel. Julius Schaub carried crates of documents to the Chancellery garden, burning the regime's remnants. That night, Hitler gathered his remaining officers. He announced that the end had come and permitted departures while he would remain. The exodus began. The bunker grew quieter as the Goebbels family arrived, 6 children unaware they were stepping into their own grave. On April 23rd, Göring's telegram reached Berchtesgaden, citing the succession decree if the Führer became incapacitated. Hitler's reply, drafted by Bormann, labeled it high treason. Paranoia consumed the bunker. Himmler had approached the Allies, and Speer had ceased visiting. Wandering the halls, Hitler sat with his dogs, listening to clocks and bombers, and stared at Frederick the Great's portrait. He said National Socialism was dead, April 24th to 25th, 1945. By April 24th, the trap had fully closed. Soviet forces concluded the encirclement of Berlin, their artillery strangling the city. All communication lines to Hitler's bunker were severed. The capital was besieged from every side, and at its center lay the Führerbunker, Berlin's dying heart. Inside, the feeling soured. After his furious breakdown on April 22nd, something in Hitler broke. He drifted through the corridors, stooping and muttering about disloyalty, issuing orders to divisions that no longer existed. He spoke repeatedly of Wenck's army, a phantom salvation, though all knew Wenck was retreating. Eva Braun, who had defied the assault to reach Berlin, stayed by his side. She laughed with the secretaries, played with the Goebbels children, brushed dust from Hitler's uniform, and scolded him for looking messy. The children drank chocolate with Uncle Führer, sang songs and read fairy tales, unaware of the death nearby. Shells struck so close the walls shook. Ceilings cracked and dust filled the air. False alarm by Russian troops sent waves of panic. Wounded soldiers crowded the corridors, and dwindling supplies frayed nerves. Meals became silent rituals. Eva said she wanted to avoid violent death. After one final meal, Hitler quietly dispensed cyanide capsules, offering them with a strange, almost tender apology. By April 26 to 27, 1945, only a tenuous wireless link to Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel remained, offering little tactical importance. The much-awaited relief from General Wenck's 12th Army and Steiner's forces had failed to appear, extinguishing the last hope of a reprisal. Adolf Hitler, physically frail and emotionally spent, alternated between furious outbursts and silent hopelessness. He admitted he could no longer command in battle. His hands trembled, and his body was debilitated, but he still refused to surrender or escape, fearing Soviet capture. Inside the bunker, resignation set in. Eva Braun, calm and devoted, began writing farewell letters. The arrest of SS General Hermann Fegelein, her brother-in-law, caught trying to escape in civilian clothes, shattered what little morale remained. He was executed in the Chancellery garden. As the end neared, the conversation turned to death. Cyanide capsules were silently shared, and talk of painless suicide became routine. Yet amid the dread, traces of humanity persisted. A wedding between a kitchen maid and a driver brought brief laughter, a fragile moment of life in the wreckage. April 28, 1945. The blow that broke Hitler did not come from outside, but from within. Late on April 28th, Heinz Lawrence of the press office brought grave news. A Reuters report, relayed by the BBC, confirmed that SS Reichsführer Heinrich Himmler, once considered his most loyal lieutenant, was secretly negotiating surrender with the Western Allies. Hitler, who had long called Himmler the most loyal man he had, froze. Confirmation of betrayal ended any remaining trust. He even doubted the cyanide Himmler had provided, fearing a plot to drug and capture him. To test it, he had Professor Haas administer it to his dog Blondie. When she collapsed instantly, he agreed it would work. With bombs shaking the walls and Soviet forces less than 2 kilometers away, Hitler made his final decision. He would die. Before that, he would marry Eva Braun, April 29, 1945. The last full day of Hitler's life began with ritual and performance, a wedding, a will, and a whispered farewell to the Reich he once ruled with iron. He dictated his political testament to Traudl Junge in the empty conference room where generals had once mapped Europe. Himmler and Göring were denounced as betrayers. National Socialism was exalted. A fantasy government was named for a nation already in ruins. He dictated his private will, naming Eva his wife and ordering that his body be burned after death. 3 couriers, Zander, von Below, and Lorenz, were chosen to escape the Soviet siege and deliver his message. In the tight passageways, staff prepared for the marriage. Uniforms were pressed, champagne glasses were polished. Everyone moved calmly, aware that this was no celebration, but a final bow. At noon, a civil registrar arrived. Eva and Hitler completed the vows, flanked by Goebbels, Bormann, and a few others. Eva signed the register, correcting her name from Braun to Hitler. Flat champagne toasts followed. No one smiled. The bunker was divided between those who would flee and those who would die. Goebbels, ordered to leave, refused and resolved to die with his family alongside Hitler. Outside, the Red Army reached Potsdamer Platz. The Chancellery burned. News of Mussolini's execution arrived. Hitler absorbed it in silence. The will, wedding, and cremation orders were all prepared. The regime would end the next day with a pistol in a concrete bunker. April 30th, 1945. After midnight, Hitler gathered his remaining generals one last time. The briefing was ritual, not strategy. The Red Army was within blocks. Slumped and trembling, his voice hoarse, he gave no commands. He said farewell to select staff. Eva Braun, now Frau Hitler, held composure in a black gown adorned with roses. By dawn, the bunker's last radio and telephone lines were dead. Escape or negotiation was impossible. Hitler requested a simple breakfast, tea and dry bread, and quietly thanked his cook. General Krebs confirmed the inevitable. Soviet forces were at the Reich Chancellery doorstep. Hitler listened in silence. After lunch, he shook hands with the staff. Eva embraced the women, urging them to flee, her voice unwavering, her hair and perfume intact. Hitler and Eva retired to his private quarters. The heavy iron door closed behind them. A pistol and cyanide awaited. By mid-afternoon on April 30th, the suicide occurred. A muffled shot rang out. Hitler was dead. Eva had taken cyanide. Otto Günsche carried their bodies to the bomb-blasted Chancellery garden, poured fuel on them, and set them ablaze. By nightfall, only ashes remained. On May 2nd, Soviet troops reached the Chancellery complex and found the bunker reduced to a charred crypt of maps, blood-stained furniture, and corpses. Days later, the war in Europe ended. The Third Reich had lasted 12 years.